Rosendahl, I believe, is close, but not here yet. And he was interested in maybe us holding the airport items until he got here. So why don't we start from...
Can we do it before 3:30?
Yes, we'll be able to do them before 3:30. He should be here any minute. If not, we'll go ahead. So I'll do like Tom LeBon does, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's start with item 5.
The Board of Highway Commissioners and the City Administrative Officer have submitted reports. This is relative to a proposed foreign trade zone operating agreement with Nippon Express USA Incorporated. This is for the operation of a warehouse at site number 7B located at 990 Francisco Street in the City of Torrance.
Okay. Mike, would you like to?
Yes, Councilwoman Hahn, Councilman Labange, we were requesting approval of a FTZ agreement for Nippon Express located in Torrance. We brought Norma Arakawa, who is very familiar with this agreement, to answer any questions you might have related to it.
Well, tell us again, and for those who are listening, what is a free trade zone, foreign trade zone?
A foreign trade zone is a special area designated under the Federal Foreign Trade Zone Act, which allows companies, if they qualify, to be able to do like processing and things and have certain benefits due to the duty customs structure. And so it's very beneficial in the sense that it encourages businesses to kind of do more operating type facilities here, which creates a better impact on the job area. So that's the essential concept of foreign trade.
Any questions, Mr.
Just a
Labange?
question. So I'm a representative of a Korean business, but I live here in Los Angeles, and I want to have better business with the trade market. Give me the scenario, 30 seconds.
Our company here can apply for a foreign trade zone application through the Port of LA, since we are considered a formal grantee, and if approved, they could move goods in from, let's say, Korea into that facility, and they would not pay duty at that particular time. So which allows them to do more processing and things, which hopefully
Do they ever pay duty? Or
yes, they would pay duty if the product, a finished product, leaves that zone and enters the normal consumer market. Then they would pay at that time.
Basically, like if I'm out on San Fernando Road, I got a warehouse, and the stuff that I make goes into the warehouse, but it doesn't get taxable till I take it out to Glen Oaks
So it
Boulevard.
allows you a better cash flow.
Okay,
you don't have to
good.
pay
Got
up front, and it really benefits.
Good idea. You thought of that, Norman? I like that, Norman. Good job.
Now, so they were in Torrance, and
They applied through us because we are a grantee under the
I see.
Federal Foreign
So they
Trade Zone.
stay in Torrance.
Yeah, their location
Their
is still in
locate
Torrance.
stays in
But
Torrance.
yes, we are the what is called the grantee, which is where they have filed their application with.
I see. Okay. Any
No, I think it's great. Let's go charge ahead.
charge ahead? I believe that would be move to approve.
Yes, move to approve.
Thank you. Okay. Let's do item 4. Thank you very much.
For item 4, you have before you a Board of Highway Commissioners report as well as City Administrative Officer report. This is relative to a fourth amendment to an agreement with Sage 2M Hill Incorporated to complete Birds 97 through 109 under the China Shipping Container Terminal Project and Environmental Impact Report.
I understand we are actually holding this item because it's my understanding that the third amendment has not come to council yet.
That's correct, Councilwoman. It would probably be more proper to lump those together and try to move those at the same time. We're told that it would be improper to move item 3 before, or item 4 before you had an opportunity to look at item 3.
Okay. So how much left? I can still ask questions though about this China shipping
We'd be glad-
project.
we'd be-
Yeah. So what's the status of the China shipping terminal, and
As
what
you're-
work is left to be done, and what's our timeline, and what's
As
going
your
on?
work, Councilwoman, the China shipping document was released in draft over a year ago.
Right.
And we received comments from the Air Quality Management District related to the baseline and emissions. And once we looked at that, we had to basically go back to the drawing board on our mitigation suite. So we've been working very hard to figure out how we could squeeze a little bit more mitigation to to try to meet the protocols that AQMD is requiring, and also
What
in under
what
10.
form is that mitigation taking?
We're looking under every rock we can, and at this point, we're looking at focusing on both trucks, actually going even one step further on trucks than we have on our clean truck program, and also looking at the terminal operating equipment, particularly the cranes.
Mm-hmm.
We've already had implemented measures on the hustling trucks, along with a very aggressive AMP schedule. So we think we're getting very close.
Are these cranes, they're not electric
No, most of the rubber type gantry
are-
cranes on our terminals are
or
not.
diesel? What are they, diesel?
They're diesel.
They're diesel.
So we're looking
So
at.
that would be something you'd be looking at?
Yes, absolutely. And my timeline at this point is to try to bring a document forward within about 2 months. So we've got a couple months of pretty intense work to finish that document in draft form and get it out on the street.
How many of the Chinese shipping ships are amping?
We're in the mid 80 percentiles right now, so they're doing an excellent job now.
So is that the highest percentage?
Yes, absolutely.
Anywhere.
Highest percentage anywhere in
Yeah,
the world.
anywhere in the world, yeah. So so I'm surprised that there's still mitigation left to be squeezed out.
Well, honestly, we were too, but we think we're there. We think we've met the health risk requirements tentatively. We're crunching those numbers very hard now to see if it.
What about the new policies that the port has enacted recently? Does any of that apply? Like your clean truck program or your low sulfur tariff program?
The low sulfur tariff program will apply in the interim, because that happens immediately, as you're aware. That's
Right.
1 year proposed to start out as a
Right.
1 year program, so that will benefit immediately.
Right.
In terms of the clean truck program, what we're proposing, that will of course benefit in the earlier years, but as the terminal goes online in its reconfigured form, we're probably going to even take that further with China shipping due to its proximity to the neighborhood. And the
So-
construction emissions program that you talked about will also be dialed in, and that will have benefits during construction.
Okay, good. So CH2M Hill is just completing the EIR and
That's correct.
trying to, as you said, squeeze out more mitigation.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, so whenever you get the third one processed, bring it back and we'll do them both together. Any questions?
When you talk about amperage, what were you talking about? Electricity?
Plugging the ship, it's called Alternative Maritime Power.
I understand. Did you know who the number one electrical customer is for the Department of Water and Power?
The gas company.
No, the Port of Los Angeles.
We're getting there.
You're right in there. So, anyway, because I got bashed in council yesterday by someone who I dearly love.
I did not bash you. I was merely asking questions about whether or not the rate
I vote to
increase
approve
was
it. I vote to
warranted.
approve it. I vote to approve it.
Very
you.
surprising and quite a coincidence. When I got off the council floor, I was notified that 1,200 customers were without power in Wilmington.
In Wilmington. Yeah.
I'm not saying anything.
They did that on purpose, huh?
Okay, thank you very much, Mike,
Thank you.
Very good.
and we will hold this item, and you can bring it back.
Very good.
Very well, thank you.
Okay, now we're on our airport items. Is there any
How about any
word from?
public comment, just for a quick minute? If there's any-
We could have Chuck Tenen. Would you like to come and make a public comment right now?
Sure would. It's an idea. Just-
What's the ETA for Councilmember Rosendahl? 4 minutes.
All right, let's bet. All right, let's have a bet. Over and unders on that, folks.
Take up to 4 minutes? No.
I say over. I'll take over. Okay, Chuck.
Honorable Janice Hahn and Councilmember Labange, Chuck Tenen.
Very honored.
I'm here today because it kind of passed over the city council the other day, but the 1999 MPLA Marine Life Protection Act is going into effect this year. It's a law, and it's going to affect the closures of our recreational offshore resources that will directly affect this city and its people. And they have the facts and figures, the impact, the loss of $100 million in local economy. The city of Los Angeles will lose millions of dollars in needed city tax revenue. The impact will hurt all of us: commerce, taxpayers, city of LA, county, boating industry, automobile industry, hotels, manufacturers, retail, sporting goods, businesses, and the buying public. It's going to affect over 761,000 anglers in California. It will affect $1.3 billion in equipment and services and expenditures, and add boating, $2.3 billion, and the loss of 20,000 jobs. The city of Los Angeles is a stakeholder, and they need to minimize the unwarranted recreational closures that will affect us all. It's going to affect the city, its people, and that influences the outlying cities and communities. Our state government is a conservatory of the people. Teddy Roosevelt in 1910 proclaimed national areas off our coast access to people for Recreational and National Parks Act. The city of Los Angeles needs to be included in this to minimize the effects of this law. Our city's hurting for revenues. Can this city afford to lose more revenues and the quality of life for its people? And the presidents and the partnerships of Sustainable Oceans and Coalitions are committed to protect this environmental impact and the city of Los Angeles without having to do unnecessary, unwarranted, massive closures. They would like to speak before the city council to give you all the facts and figures, how it's going to affect the loss of city tax revenue and how it's going to affect the city. Now, I ask you, Janice Hahn,
Yes.
These people asked me to come, and I wanted to come and see you and see if they could do this, because, you know, the city's hurting in revenues. And I mentioned before we started that in my condo, there's 4 other projects going on, and Tom LeBon should take note of this too, because 60% of the contractors in this city do jobs, condo jobs, plumbing, electrical, and building there. In my building, 4 jobs going on, no permits, no inspectors. But mine is getting the inspector because it's a city sanction and the permits. And my contractor of 20 years working with the city, 60% of the contractors. You know how much revenue that is?
Let me ask
They
you a
don't
question,
enforce
Chuck,
it.
real quick, because we got a minute here.
Yeah.
Okay,
We're working on it.
there's all the people driving out of the street. How many you think are just percentage-wise driving without a license? Pick a number.
Automobile license?
Yeah.
Thousands.
No, percent.
Oh, percent in this city?
Yeah, out of 100% of the people. 5%? Just say 5%.
25%.
That many. How many are doing construction without permits? That's the question I'm getting to.
60%.
60%. So 60% without, so that means 40 with. That adds up to 100% of the people. So therefore, Chuck, your idea there should be explored, and I thank you for
Thank
the
you very
comment.
much.
And I'll talk to you about it
Thank
after
you very
this
much.
meeting.
Thank you very much.
And as far as the other thing, is it possible they could come and show you the facts and figures?
Sure, have them, have
Because
them.
this is
So
coming
here,
up
they don't need to come. Give us a one sheet, Chuck. A one sheet.
I gave a one sheet.
You didn't
last
give it to
week.
me.
I gave it to you.
No, you didn't.
I did.
All right,
I gave
you
it to-
two.
I
Take
gave
it
to all
outside.
20 council.
Okay, thank you very
Anyhow,
much. Thank you,
thank
Chuck.
20 council
Thank you.
members, only 15.
Thank you, Chuck. Okay, number 3, actually, we're going to continue it for 90 days.
Good. Okay, I
Okay.
move number 3 continue.
All right, let's go to number 2.
The overs or unders?
Under-
Overs 1.
Yeah, the overs one.
Under
Okay,
item
number 2.
Under item 2, the Board of Airport Commissioners submits for approval the Fourth Amendment to contract with HNTB Corporation, which is a contract
Oh.
to provide technical expertise
Sorry,
and
there.
assistance in the development and preparation of the LA-Ontario Master Plan. And the amendment would extend the contract term by 3 years, would remove provision for payment
I get it.
by the consultant of liquidated damages if work is not completed by a specified deadline.
Okay, I erred on item 3. We're actually going to hear item 3, and then we're going to continue it for 90 days so it can come back. So I erred on that.
You better revote it.
So,
Well, do you want to do number 2 right now?
yeah, we'll do item 2.
So you're going to defer item 3?
No, we are going to hear item 3.
Oh, okay,
So
But right
confused.
now, we're hearing
But
number
now we're on 2.
okay.
Okay, would you like to?
Sure, good
On
morning.
item 2.
Item 2 is a contract extension for HNTB Corporation to complete the master plan and the environmental impact report for Ontario Airport. We're not asking for any additional funds. The reason we need this is when When Lydia Kennard came back on board as the executive director with the change of administrations, HNTB was directed at that point in time to stop working on the master plan while Ms. Kennard took a relook at the whole regionalization. So they were asked to stop. They were put on hold. They have now been retasked to complete the master plan. So the contract is not requesting any additional funds. It's an extension of time to allow them the time to complete the master plan and the environmental document.
What's the timeline for completing the master plan?
We are on schedule to have the draft EIR completed by November of this year. The master plan is essentially done with the exception of the
Right.
financial plan.
At
Right.
Ontario.
At Ontario,
I think
yes.
That's fair.
Right.
Yes,
Okay.
Gina Marie wants it?
absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
All right.
That's
Yeah.
good enough for
Okay.
me.
Move to approve. Thank you. Now let's go back to 3. Or 3?
One.
Okay, 3.
Okay, under item 3.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm just like
He was late for school. Come
Arnold
on now.
Sachs, but item 2.
Arnold, what's your address? I'll fill it out for you. Give it to me.
10505
10505?
Hawthorne
Great.
Boulevard,
Okay, good. In Hawthorne or LA?
Lennox.
Lennox, okay, good.
Okay.
Lennox High.
Just really very quickly, I have some things to say about the airport commissioner, something that happened at the airport, Arnold Sachs.
You're on, speaking on item 2.
Right,
And let's,
but I just wanted to know that in the future, when you designate, I know that officially it's LA Ontario International Airport, but when you read this as a public, more or less, not necessarily knowing, you could take this to mean LA/Ontario
right,
International both airports.
right.
And there's a tendency a lot of times, I mean, I've talked about how people are requesting, state senator, Congress people are requesting funding for the red line extension down Wilshire Boulevard when it shouldn't be the red line to be extended, it should be the purple line.
Purple line, yeah.
There's a lot of misinterpretation. So is there a way that when this is presented in front of the council or in front of for the public's benefit, that they know that we're talking about Ontario Airport, we're not talking necessarily about Los Angeles Ontario Airport, and we're not talking about Los Angeles Airport, because when funding comes up, instead of going here, there's a tendency to go there.
I think that's an excellent point. I believe in transparency and making our agendas friendly to people who are interested and would like to come. So make a note, Mike Molina, from here in the future. When we talk about Ontario, we talk about Ontario. When we talk about LA, we talk about LA. We know that they're all under LA World Airports.
Wait a second,
but I think
Madam
that's-
Chair. There was a big effort made, and I think to call Los Angeles Palmdale, call Van Nuys, Los Angeles Van Nuys, call Los Angeles Ontario. You may want to correct me. I do remember reading my notes.
There was a huge effort to officially change the name. In fact, the designation.
I'm
is
just
now-
saying for these agenda items, make it clearer that we are speaking about
Just the agenda.
one of the airports.
Absolutely.
Yes,
London Heathrow, London Gatwick, Los Angeles Ontario, Los Angeles.
yes, because I agree. It could be confusing to the public. So I can see for branding, but for agenda items, let's make it clear that we're talking about one of the specific
Go to
airports.
Lennox or Hawthorne High? Okay.
Okay, Tom. Okay, we're joined by Councilmember Bill Rosendahl. Let's hear item 3.
Could I
Oh,
apologize and see if I could ask him a question or two on this issue?
oh, certainly.
Okay.
Good morning.
Morning.
We're still on item 2 then.
That's what I was wondering. Why has Lawa specifically deleted the section of the contract that imposes damages for missing the completion deadlines?
The problem in the original contract, as I mentioned earlier, the contract terms included liquidated damages specific to meeting deadlines that were in the original contract. For example, submittal of the draft master plan was to be done on November 30th of 2005.
Yeah.
What happened was the HNTB was directed by the then executive director, Ms. Kennard, to stop work under the contract.
I see.
So they were directed not to complete the work. The liquidated damages are specifically tied to dates that are in the past that were not met because of direction from the executive director.
I see. But we're on target now?
We are on target to have the draft EIR out in
And are we
November.
eventually going to handle 30 million planes out of there? That's our goal, right?
That's the goal. That's what we're designing.
What is your
for.
timeline for approval and implementation of the master plan?
We hope to have all of the master plan documentation done. In fact, everything's done right now with the exception of the financial plan. The admin draft will be done in September. Will be circulated to the city agencies for comment. The draft EIR will be done in November with a deadline for April at the latest of '09 to publish the final EIR and the notice of determination.
I'm just curious about master plan ground transportation links. Where are we on that?
We have within the master plan, we're working very closely with the City of Ontario to make sure that we have rapid transit as well as light rail connectivity to both the regional and a local.
Yeah, because they're so close to Ontario right now.
Yes.
And when we do this whole bit about transportation with
Right.
the county and MTA and all that, do they have that in their plans?
They
too?
do, and we are very supportive of the Gold Line task force in moving the Gold Line out to Ontario.
Very good, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I thought we would continue this for 90 days so we can get a report back.
That'd be great.
And keep on top of this.
I believe we have a problem if we do that the contract expires, does it not?
Yes, this is an amendment to the contract.
Oh, no, wait a minute. You know, it's too confusing. It's just too confusing of a morning.
I agree. We should move it. No.
We were on 3, but then we went back to 2 because you showed up late.
Yeah.
And okay, so now we're still on 2.
Current contract expires.
Call on the
Whose
clerk.
contract?
HNTBs.
Oh, no, we're approving this.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
We're approving this.
As you
Fact-
request. So you want it
Yes.
approved?
Thank you. Yes,
Thank
please.
We've had
Unanimous.
public comment on
Quick.
2. That was like 10 minutes ago. And then, yes.
I didn't help, Ms. Hunt, on anything,
No, you
so I
didn't.
apologize.
No. Okay, now, let us move to item 3. We're all on the same page now.
Golly, golly.
Item 3 is consideration of motion Parks Han, which was introduced on November 20th, 2007, proposing that the council ask Los Angeles World Airports to report on specified matters relating to noise and air impacts on neighborhoods adjacent to LAX.
Okay.
We did submit a written report
Soundproofing program.
to the City Council, and specifically there were 3 questions that were asked in the Parks and Han motion that was passed. The first one was, what is the status and location of the current noise monitoring efforts by Lawa for establishment of new noise contours? We are in the process right now of installing a new automated noise and operations management system. We have about 90% of the new monitoring locations in place right now. We are targeted to be done hopefully within the next 3 months. We have extended the locations of those monitors substantially farther out than they have been in the past. In fact, 2 of them, I believe, Ms. Hahn, are now in your district. We've gone that far east of the airport, actually into Watts and into South Los Angeles, with the intent of trying to get beyond the 65 CNEL, which is the federal and state noise standard for incompatible land use, and get out to be able to monitor out to even quieter areas. So we've added a number of noise monitors. With respect,
And the only way a home becomes eligible for soundproofing is if, in fact, it's been monitored and it's proven that it's within the higher decibels.
right, the federal standards for soundproofing are it has to be within what's called the 65 decibel
Right.
community noise exposure level. We actually soundproof homes right now in noise areas that are below the 65 because we are using the 4th quarter of 1992 noise contour maps for our soundproofing program, and that was actually the largest historical noise exposure contour that LAX has ever had. In fact, we're using that for all of our airports right now. The reason for that is in '92 they were still flying Stage 1 aircraft. So we are soundproofing out to the noisiest homes, and we've recently expanded that program to include what we call an end-of-the-block program.
Right, so if you're on the block.
If you're on, the last
Yeah.
program, candidly, when
Right.
they implemented it, they drew a line on a map. And
Right.
if you were outside the line, you
Right.
could have been next door to somebody, but
Right.
you weren't eligible. Which,
Right.
You know, I mean, that's a good way to make friends. You know,
Right.
you're not as noisy as your neighbors. So
Right.
we've added almost 1,100 homes to the soundproofing program through the end of the block program.
And when you
So,
add homes, do you have to go back to the FAA for approval? Or?
we do have to go to the FAA for approval on the program.
And so far, they've been,
They've been very, yeah, I mean, everything we're doing is in compliance with theirs. They call it, the FAA calls it rounding out. We call it end of the block, but it's an approved procedure under the FAA.
so currently, you've done more than 8,200?
Yes. Yeah,
And you've
that's
got,
actually,
and you have, and you'll add a different
we're adding about
1,100?
1,100 homes, 500 in Council District 11 and 600 in Council District 8 will be eligible for the program. And we've actually started that. We now have some of those homeowners have enlisted in the program, and we're working on
What's the
design.
total cost for, what do you think it will be for
For-
these? So well, how many total homes?
We average total homes at LAX,
Right.
Not just within the city of Los Angeles,
Right.
but El Segundo.
Right,
and
total
Inglewood,
homes.
About 45,000.
45,000?
Yes. Those are dwelling units, I'm
And
sorry.
total
So,
cost of that will be?
we're averaging right now about $26,000 per unit. So, yeah, it's
Really?
got to be in front of it.
And that is double painting?
That is, it's.
What is that? Well, how do you soundproof a home?
And you know, again, had I started the program, I would call it sound insulation because you really can't soundproof a home. But it's
Right. Right.
It's a sound insulation program.
Is it basically double pane?
Actually, it's triple pane, and in
Triple
some cases,
pane.
4 panes. We put
Really?
in solid core doors if they don't have solid core doors. If they have a mail slot, we put in an acoustically treated mail slot. We put insulation in the ceilings, blow insulation in there. In most of the homes that we're doing now, because we're adding so much insulation, we're adding new heating and air conditioning systems. So it's a
Wow.
fairly extensive program. So.
And this is all paid out of the $500 million community
This is
benefits
all-
agreement?
Well, the Community Benefits Agreement established a minimum payment schedule for El Segundo, the county, and Inglewood of $12.5 million per year. Those three communities also receive FAA funds for some of the homes. The homes that fall within the FAA
So the
65.
total, so somebody do the math. What's the total cost?
I think it's close to $1 billion total.
For
what
these
we will have
45,000
spent-
homes?
What we will have spent in total.
$1 billion?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So that's more than the,
Yes. Oh, it's significantly more than what's in the community benefit agreement.
Madam Hahn, I support this effort of the department.
I do too. I'm just trying to figure it out because I'm trying to get the same deal at the port. So how does that work? How did you come to the $500 million community benefits agreement and then spend $1 billion on the soundproofing?
Well,
Because I thought
the
soundproofing was a
soundproofing-
part of the community benefits agreement.
Soundproofing, there are two elements of soundproofing that are part of the community benefits agreement. The first one was to establish a minimum payment for the city of El Segundo, Inglewood, and LA County. It established a minimum payment of $12.5 million per year. Because what we do is the city comes to us, those three jurisdictions all manage their own soundproofing program, and they come to us for grant funds to help pay for it. And we've had no established minimum payment level. So part of the community benefits agreement was to establish a minimum payment level of $12.5 million. Another large
To each of those?
to each of those jurisdictions.
Okay.
Right. Now, they are able to get more than $12.5 million if they can demonstrate that they're actually soundproofing more homes and can use more money. It just establishes a minimum threshold of payment to them. The second part of it that's related to soundproofing was actually related to the Inglewood and Lenox school districts, where it provides funding to go back in and soundproof classrooms in those two school districts that are in noise impact areas. That portion of the community benefits agreement has not yet been approved by the FAA because we actually have navigation easements. Both those school districts entered a settlement agreement with Lawa, and there is a Senate bill on the floor right now that would actually authorize Lawa to expend funds to sound insulate those schools. So we're waiting along with the FAA for that bill.
And then what about the air pollution?
at the last board meeting, our board approved a what we're calling a source apportionment study, which is the most comprehensive air quality study that's ever been conducted by an airport anywhere. It's going to take us about 2.5 years to complete. It's being done in 3 phases. What we're trying to do is identify both the contaminants that are out in the community, but in addition to that, going beyond that, trying to identify the sources of those contaminants. Because, as you know, we have a refinery next to us, we have a power plant, we have major freeways, we have major roads. We're trying to determine what the major sources of contamination are, where they're coming from, so that we can focus our mitigation efforts on those sources that have the most impact to the communities. So.
Would you like to add something, Mr. Rosen?
Yeah, that's exciting what you're just saying there. Are you going to bring it a little closer to the Santa Monica Airport? We heard discussions about that issue.
Actually, I have been sitting on the Santa Monica Airport Technical Working Group for their air quality study.
Yeah.
And Santa Monica Airport has asked us if they would pay for it if we would put a monitoring station in their location as part of our air quality study. So as we move into the next phase of the study, we're working with Santa Monica to look at that.
And I look forward to that, and I'd like you to work with 2 groups. The group called CRAP, which is Concerned Citizens Against Airport Pollution, the Rubens,
Right.
And then also with the Mar Vista Neighborhood Council Subcommittee that has been set up at the Santa Monica Airport.
We are one of the things we're doing, Councilman, is we're putting together a policy advisory group that you'll be getting a notice on. We're asking basically the elected officials or their representatives to participate in this policy advisory group.
Great, because I was at the Santa Monica City Council last night late with the FAA dealing with their issues there, and met with the FAA earlier in the day with Congresswoman Jane Harmon. And in those discussions, we talked about not just one monitor, but we would like several monitors in the Mar Vista, West LA community to help us get that data. It would be very critical to help us with that issue.
Well, we will work with Santa Monica on that.
Good. So you work with our office, because the city of Santa Monica is one thing,
Right.
but those 2 groups are very key. Great. And we look forward to hearing more about that. I'd like a report back on the kinds of discussions that took place, let's say in 60 days on that. Okay. See where we can go. Okay. What percentage of the eligible homes have been soundproofed so far in Westchester and Playa del Rey?
Out of the roughly 8,800, I believe about 6,000 have been soundproofed.
My office has received complaints from constituents that ventilation systems installed in soundproofed homes fail or provide poor air circulation. Is this a problem that you are aware of, and can we do anything to fix it?
Actually, it's not a problem I'm aware of. I have to say we're actually pretty proud of our program. As I mentioned, sound insulating homes is it's fairly intrusive work. I mean, you're going in while somebody's living there, ripping their doors and windows out. We have not had one claim filed against the city that has resulted in an award of any payment. I mean,
That's beautiful, but here's what they're really saying: that it's not the soundproofing itself.
Yeah.
Why can't we, or why shouldn't we install air conditioners as part of the program, since soundproofing only works when the windows are closed? In other words, you put that in there, but then the air circulation is an issue. Shouldn't air conditioning, if we're going to tightly...
And we do. We install new HVAC.
You do?
We do, yeah.
And
yeah,
so
you're right,
if,
because
if
we had to go
that,
to...
You'll get back to them and do that.
Absolutely. We had to go to the FAA, actually, to get approval for that, because we were not in a zone that was initially approved by the FAA to add air conditioning. And we demonstrated to them what the temperatures were in Westchester, and they came back and approved. We actually went back and have retrofitted homes that were previously soundproof before HVAC was allowed to install the HVAC systems. So
that's very good.
Yeah.
We need to get that word out to our folks. Also, my constituents in Playa del Rey are concerned that they will be left out of the air quality source apportionment study. Of course, I request that Lawa specifically include air quality monitoring stations in Playa del Rey as well as Westchester for the 12-month study and ask that you report to this committee on those locations once they're identified.
Yeah, what we're doing right now through the phase one is actually monitoring locations around the airport to target airport sources. We have a technical advisory group that's comprised of the US EPA, California Air Resources Board, the South Coast Air Quality Management District. We have the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment through the state of California, as well as USC, and then several community groups. Joe Liu, who is on the board of, is a governing board on AQMD, as well as California Rights Alliance, sits on that. And that group is the one that's providing a lot of the science and background on helping us identify the locations of these monitors. So,
Great.
yeah.
Well, I appreciate what you're doing,
Yeah.
and I appreciate your answers to the questions and on the record, which is also helpful for both Westchester.
Right. I've just got to say, well, being in negotiations recently with the Port of Los Angeles and trying to come up with a similar community benefits agreement is so refreshing, honestly, to listen to Lawa talk about this in such a really civilized manner. It's very, very impressive, and you all are just miles ahead, I think, of other entities in the city of Los Angeles that understand that there are negative impacts from our economic engines, and no one wants to shut them down, but clearly we have an obligation to mitigate those impacts, and none of these economic engines are worth the health risks that in the past they've imposed on people's lives. So really want to thank you and congratulate you. I know it was a long, hard fought agreement, but you know what? They always say that, it's one thing to come to the agreement, it's another thing to implement it.
Yeah.
And your implementation has absolutely been really noble.
Thank you.
Honestly,
I will
you guys
pass that
deserve
on
a
to Ms.
tremendous
Thank
amount
you.
of credit. And it's always refreshing to hear the stakeholders, too,
Yeah.
that are still at the table.
Yeah.
Still at the table, making sure that this is implemented in a proper way. You are a model for not only Los Angeles, other proprietary departments, but
Thank
really for, I think, for the country in terms of how airports move forward to coexist with, residential neighborhoods and schools.
And this is where now the latest was with Santa Monica. The meeting lasted until 11:30 last night at the council, and part of the issue, obviously, is where the FAA wants to take that airport, if anywhere. But in the meantime, those monitors there would be extremely helpful for us in that part of the community. So I look forward to that extension and getting back to us with the meetings you've had with those people around there and what we need to do and not to do.
Great.
Great. Okay, so this is the one that we're going to continue and get a progress report in 90 days.
On this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's
you
really
have-
helpful for us to pay attention to how this is implemented. I think it's,
Councilman Rosendahl had requested a progress report in 60 days. Do you want to?
And that's my 60 days for the Santa Monica
Okay. All right.
monitoring systems. That what we're realizing, which is really great, is that there's going to be some air quality monitoring of LAX, and now we've gone even further to slip in Santa Monica Airport, and people in both the city of Santa Monica and my communities are very excited about that. So that I'd like a report.
So you
back
want to
in
report
60
back in 60 days?
on
Well,
that particular.
well, we might as well have
The whole thing.
the whole thing in 60 days, see how we're going. Although I don't know if there's much more to update on.
There really won't be. The first phase
Okay.
of this is it's going to take us 9 months to get through the first phase of this.
All right, well then why don't we just have a 60-day report back on the
Okay.
Santa Monica
business.
piece?
Great.
Okay. I have no idea where we are.
Do you want to do item one? Item one.
Okay.
Contract.
Under item one, you have the Board of Airport Commissioners requesting council approval for the First Amendment to the contract with Harris, Miller, and Hansen. This is a contract for services to conduct two separate Federal Aviation Regulation Part 161 studies, one at LAX and one at Van Nuys Airport. The amendment would extend the contract term by 3 years to increase would also increase compensation and expand the scope of work. The CAO also has submitted a report and recommendation for approval of the First Amendment to this contract.
I got a bunch of questions. Would you please describe how you will measure noise levels for the purpose of the study?
Well, the noise levels for the purpose of the study will be done by a combination of our noise monitoring system and actual noise modeling using the FAA's integrated noise modeling system. So essentially, it'll be monitored and modeled noise.
Very good. Has the future LAX fleet and traffic forecast been completed? And what level of traffic are you assuming for the Part 161 study?
We are 90% done. In fact, I just had a conference call on the fleet mix, and they're running into some interesting problems with forecasting right now because we are in uncharted territories with $100+ crude oil and a lot of the other stuff going on. The typical forecasting methodologies are creating some interesting problems. So we're actually going to be using a range. We are using 78.9 million annual passengers as the limit of the future forecasting under the terms of the settlement agreement. So that's where we're going. But we are working very closely with the specific plan amendment study consultants that are working on that EIR to make sure that the forecast for the specific plan amendment study and the Part 161 are the same, which is one of the reasons why we had to go back with a contract extension.
Very good. Currently, how many flights a month typically depart to the east between the hours of midnight and 6:30 a.m.?
It's really difficult to average it out over a monthly basis because it's really weather dependent. Sometimes we can have 2, sometimes we can have as many as 8. So it really varies. It's something that defies our ability to actually predict because it is so heavily dependent on what the weather conditions are.
Okay, fair enough, but the goal of the Part 161 study, as stated by Lawa, is to prohibit easterly departures during these specific times. Why shouldn't we also prohibit arrivals from the east during those times?
The arrivals actually do not come from the east during those times. Between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m., the airport goes into what we call over-ocean operations, where the arrivals come in from the east on the north side of the airport. They land on the inboard, and they take off to the west on the south runway on 25 right. What happens is if we have a tailwind, and we stay in those conditions until we get a 10-knot tailwind. And once we get a 10-knot tailwind, we actually turn the airport around into what's called east operations. But what happens is, and it's primarily the Asian carriers, long-haul jumbo jets, a lot of passengers, a lot of cargo, a lot of fuel. When they do their takeoff calculations, they're too heavy to take off with, say, an 8 or a 9-knot tailwind. So they request clearance to take off into the wind, which gives them greater lift.
Sure.
What we are trying to do is during the times we are in over-ocean operations and aircraft are departing to the west, we are trying to close that runway off to any easterly departures so nobody can depart to the east. The ordinance would not affect easterly departures if the airport went into true easterly operations, which would be dictated by weather.
Tell me, the Australians, they don't let anything happen from midnight to 6:30 in the morning.
Sydney, Melbourne does, but the city of Sydney has a noise curfew.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so if we had a curfew, how many flights would that affect?
It would probably affect about 32 international flights a day.
And has anybody looked into the idea of maybe before midnight and maybe after 6:30, or is it a problematic air route issue?
With a curfew?
Yeah.
It would. I mean, I could tell you from our perspective, it would be impossible to do. There is no way under the FAA's guidelines. We would never be able to demonstrate any. In order to impose a local ordinance or noise restriction, you have to be able to demonstrate that the cost of the impact is greater than the benefit of the operations. I don't see how we would ever be able to come up with a cost-benefit analysis to impose a true curfew at LAX.
Are you getting complaints at all from residents about that?
I would occasionally, and again, part of the reason is because they're only occasional. So they only happen under certain weather conditions. One of the reasons we are doing this, though, is when they do happen, it is one of the largest sources of complaints because it's so noticeable.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So.
Well, that is an issue and unresolved, and we'll just keep it at that point here. And
But are there less complaints since with the soundproofing program?
There are. One of the problems is because of the nature of this operation, most of the homes that are impacted are not eligible for soundproofing. So what we're trying to prevent is what happens is these guys take off at midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, and they
Right.
take off over Lenox,
Right.
make a nice slow turn at about 1,000 feet over Hawthorne and then Torrance and then cross Redondo Beach at about 2,000 feet,
Right.
which, you know, if you're sound asleep, you've got a fully loaded 747, it's noticeable. But it doesn't create enough noise over an annual basis
To
to make it
qualify.
to qualify for
that issue.
soundproofing.
For this study, will noise be monitored and measured in both Westchester and Playa del Rey?
This study is going to focus primarily on the areas to the east and south. It's primarily focused on what's happening on the South Runway complex.
And that's basically because
That's where
the planes are coming.
the arrivals come in on the north and the departures leave on the south.
I just have a question about a study that's already been completed for Van Nuys. That was the Federal Aviation Regulations Part 150.
Right.
What's the difference between that and the Part 161?
The Part 150 and the names for these actually come out of the Federal Aviation Regulations, Part 150 and Part 161. A Part 150 study is composed of two things. It contains what are called noise exposure maps, where basically what we do is we forecast what the noise exposure to the community is going to be over a 5-year period. And then the second part of it is a noise mitigation program where we propose different measures to mitigate those noise impacts and to try and minimize the exposure. The Part 150 maps are the maps that the FAA actually approve for the funding of soundproofing, because those maps show noise exposure going out to the 65 decibel contour. The Van Nuys Part 161 study that we're doing, 7 of the measures that were included in the Van Nuys Part 150, the FAA came back with a determination that those measures required a 161 study in order to be implemented. So a 150 study is typically measures that do not create controls or local access restrictions on the basis of noise.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay, so with that, we'll approve that with no objections. Okay, so we're down to public comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What do you think?
You're doing a great job.
Thanks.
Appreciate it very much.
Good job. Okay, we have Arnold Sachs and Chuck Tenon. Chuck doesn't look like he stayed, so Arnold.
We're going to make you an honorary elected someday.
Good morning, Arnold Sachs.
Good morning.
Very quickly, on item number 2, I meant to add, make sure that whatever the EIR reports include greening, because a lot of times if the stuff doesn't include the greening stuff, come back later on and it's a $10 million bill like at Lawa. Soundproofing at other Lawa airports like Ontario and Palmdale. Preventive before they increase their plane loads? Is it going to be looked into as a preventive measure before they start to increase instead of chasing the tail after the horse has already left the barn? And then finally, there was an article, and I'm really concerned about this, on Thursday, on the 13th, regarding some new procedures the FAA imposed at the LAX, requiring the air traffic controllers to receive a correct readback of flight instructions from pilots landing at the airport. Now, the reason I'm concerned is, a couple of reasons. First of all, according to the article, and I put whatever weight you want to put, the new rule was implemented following a runway incursion reported at LAX over the summer. I believe that occurred in August. Now, if this new rule was implemented in August and they're just starting to enforce it at LAX, that's a 5-month differential. According to what Michael Foote, who's the local president of the National Air Traffic Controllers Association, said, and I'm quoting here, unfortunately, we are too often placed in a situation where if we do what is safest, we face discipline. My head's still spinning around on that one. But what I don't understand is, here they've imposed a rule, and they 5 months for them to implement it, or they implement a rule and 5 months for them to impose it. What? Who, what, where? I mean, and then part of the article goes on to state that the man is complaining actually because they have a rule that states that they have too many airlines, quote unquote, potentially to land like 65 or 72 flights an hour, which is never reached. Then it goes on to talk about this imposing of a new rule, FAA regulation. And it states that they're doing it so that LAX can catch up with the rest of the country where it's required. It's a good thing LAX is such a knucklehead operation that's so low down that it doesn't have to do the rest of this stuff and gets 2 weeks or 6 months to catch up with the rest of the country.
Thank you. Thank you.
According,
Duly noted.
I'm going to talk to them at there because.
Duly noted. Okay.
And also, one other thing.
Yes.
I'd like to get the Port of LA back in here to find out what happened to the $90 million that they didn't spend on the container
Inspection facility. Yes. Thansee you.
I'd like to see them back
Thank
here.
you. I would too. Thank you.
Because that came as a shock.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This meeting is now adjourned.
You might want to just ask for the tape because they had some.